In this video, we will show you how to replace your front bumper cover on this GMC Acadia. This will be mounted across the front of your vehicle. Let's get into it. Locate your negative battery terminal. We're going to use a 10mm to loosen this nut just enough that the terminal end breaks free from the battery, and we'll set this aside, making sure it's making no contact. Underneath the front corner of the vehicle, we're going to start dislodging this panel and removing this flap. This is all held in place with several 7mm headed mounting bolts, 2 across the front, and then there's 3 across the side. We'll hold on to this flap for the last one. Let's make our way inside the wheel well now. Typically, you do not need to remove your front wheels to be able to dislodge this. We'll be making our way up along this area using a T15 to remove all 3 of these mounting bolt screws. Now we should be able to start dislodging this from behind the bumper cover. You may have to use a trim tool or even a small pick. Whatever you do, just be careful not to cause any damage. Make our way all the way up here. With that pulled away, we'll continue on just a little bit further here. We've got one more of those T15s. Start pulling this out of there. Let's start separating the fender molding from the bumper cover and from the fender, making its way up along here. Just use a plastic trim tool, something that's not going to cause any damage. Generally, you can just make your way in between this area and gently pry. This portion does make its way underneath here, but it's just a very small amount. Generally, you can just pull it right out of place. There we are. Gently pry. Once you've made it up past this point here, we'll continue on right up along the top of this. We'll use a 7mm for this. If you do want to remove the wheel, safely raise and support so you can remove all 6 of your 22mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now moving along, you're going to find that you have 2 T20 screws. They're tucked in right behind this area of the fender. To be able to figure out exactly where they are, if you were to feel along the top of where the fender is, you're going to find some little push clip looking tabs that stick up. There's one here, one inboard, a little bit further forward there. You don't have to fully remove them. Once you have them loose, we can start tugging on this bumper cover to separate it. Now let's pay attention along where the bumper cover and the fender meet. We're going to reach behind this area, gently give it a tug. You should see this want to pop free. There we are. Now at this point, we've dislodged the front bumper cover from the driver's side. Go over to the passenger side. Repeat the exact same process. With the passenger side of the bumper cover dislodged, let's continue on with the large electrical connector located just in this area. Go ahead and take hold of it. We're going to give it a little wiggle, slide it towards the front, dislodge it from its mounting bracket. You can see it right here. Now this is going to be a little bit easier to start taking care of. We have to take this red locking tab, slide it downward, and then we're going to take this white portion, bring that down. As we do so, this will separate. Just going to use a small pocket screwdriver. We'll slide that out of place. Sometimes that'll stay on there, other times it just slides right out. Continuing from here, we're going to take hold of that white portion as I mentioned. Go ahead and pivot that. You can see it separating right along here. If your red locking tab did slide out of there, we're just going to start that in. You don't need to fully press it up into the lock position because, of course, we do have to reconnect it before we do so. Now we'll just rest this aside in towards the bumper cover. This is going to come off with the bumper cover. Once you've completed the other side of the vehicle, we're going to be paying attention directly along the bottom of the bumper cover here. You'll find that there's 3 7mm headed mounting bolts to remove. Now let's make our way to this area. You're going to find that you have 2 7mm headed mounting bolts holding this together. There's one. There's 2. Let's just make sure that this is separated right here. Making our way back up towards the engine compartment, we'll start dislodging the front grille. If you were to look along the top of the front grille, you're going to find several T15 screws that make their way across. We'll be removing each of these. You got one just located underneath this area. Now that we have those out of there, to continue on, you're going to find that you have 2 more T15 screws. There's one here and one just on the other side of the hood release handle. Each of these are holding down a plastic adapter. We want to remove that as well. There's the adapter. It's right with it. We'll set that aside. Get our small adapter again. Quick inspection. With all the mounting hardware out of there, let's continue on along the top of the grille area here. You're going to find that you have a small tab that protrudes up from your headlamp assembly, and it slides inside the port on each side of the grille assembly. We'll go ahead and break these free. Just lift up on them and separate it. Now, while we're over here on the passenger side, let's take hold of our rubber seal. We're going to dislodge this. It just has some hooks that make its way across the plastic area. You just want to tug on the seal. Be careful not to cause any damage. We'll just have a quick peek at that. This looks great. Set that aside. Continuing from here, it's time to take hold of the bumper cover just behind the fender flare. When doing so, we're going to lightly tug, separating it from underneath the headlamp assembly. You want to do this on both sides of the vehicle. Are. Let's carefully start pulling this away from the vehicle. We'll start bringing this into position, paying attention along the top. We need to align our mounting bolt holes, but we also need to pay attention along each one of our headlamp assemblies. While I'm bringing this up, I'm just going to try to align this as close as possible. You can see our little locating tab there. Just start in some of these upper mounting bolts coming across, holding this in place for us. Way over here, slide that in. Now we've got our 2 bolts for the front corners. Before we tighten those, let's align each side here coming along our fender. Just tap this in, make sure it's properly secured. Same thing on the other side. Now we can snug up our upper mounting hardware. Continuing from there, we have the 2 screws that also had the plastic adapters. Go ahead and slide those adapters down into their ports. Start on the screw, snug it up. Now it's time for our rubber seal here. You can tell on the plastic area you have the hooked ends. We want to make sure we try to give this a little tug to stretch it over, rest it in position, making our way across. On the other end, you have this area that'll slide into the other piece of the seal. Let's get this in position. A light tug as we continue on. Let's make our way under the front bumper cover for our 2 7mm headed mounting screws under this area. Snug them up. Now we need to make our way behind the front bumper cover on the passenger side for our electrical connector. We'll get our electrical connector in place. Just press that right together. As you're pressing it together, it only goes in so far. At that point, you're going to have to go ahead and start pivoting the white lever here. As we're pivoting this, it's drawing the 2 pieces together. Once you feel as though you have it locked in, we're going to give it a little tug. We're trying to separate this. If it comes apart, it's not locked in properly. Assuming it doesn't, go ahead and continue double locking it in with this red locking tab. One more quick inspection of this area. Now we can start putting in our mounting bolt that holds this area together. Just start that in by hand and snug it up. Let's just confirm this is nice and tight. And now we'll make our way a little bit forward. We're going to have to make our way underneath this plastic bracket. Make sure that's nice and tight. There we go. Now we can snug this other mounting bolt. Now before we press in this portion, it's a good idea to go ahead and take your fender liner and we're going to tuck it in and behind this area. Into where it belongs. You can see our mounting bolt holes are properly aligned. Now we can install the fender trim panel. We'll just flex this up into the bumper cover right along the bottom area. We'll tap that into the proper position. Continue on with bringing this in and behind the bumper cover now. Now we have our 4 mounting screws. They're started in, let's snug them up. Now we can make our way underneath this area. Now let's tuck this in down along the bottom area as well. We're going to install 2 mounting screws across this area. And then we have the small plastic flap that will go across this with 3 mounting screws holding that in place as well. Let's snug the pair. Let's get our flap on here. We've got 3 mounting screws. There's one. Now we can snug these up as well. Now that we've completed this side, let's do the exact same thing on the other side of the bumper cover. Once you have both sides of the bumper cover and fender liner reinstalled, it's time to reinstall the wheel. We'll get this in position, start on all 6 of our 22mm lug nuts, bottom them out, get the wheels safely back down on the ground, and we'll be torquing each of them to 140 foot-pounds. After installing both of the wheels on the vehicle, we have this back on the ground. We're going to torque both side front wheels to 140 in a crisscross manner, as I mentioned. Torqued. Repeat the process on the other side of the vehicle. It's time to reconnect our negative battery terminal. We'll press this right down into position. Once you're holding it down onto the battery as far as possible, tighten your 10mm headed mounting nut. Once it's tight, just make sure it's nice and snug to the battery. You can have a loose connection here. Right there is bottomed out. Just take it a tiny bit further here. We don't want to cause any damage, but we do need to make sure this is properly secured. Okay, friend, we've got our vehicle back together. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test, listen for funny noises. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.